I'm back in Australia, back in the sunshine. In fact, for those of you watching the video, not just listening to the podcast, if I move just to the side a little bit, we get sunshine, which is nice. Haven't had a lot of that lately. Although, mind you, the Vegas thing was very sunshine, but also like desert and searing heat as well. So not so great. If you're watching this, you'll also see that I'm in both jacket and hoodie. It's 13.6 degrees here at the moment. So this is still the tail end of winter, I guess. And the other great thing about being back in Australia is I've got coffee again. I mean, like proper, decent coffee. Which, frankly, I need because I'm still battling the jet lag. And I'm kind of in that phase where it's like, do I battle the jet lag and try and get over it? Or do I just go, screw it, live with it, because in a week I'll be off again anyway? Don't know, still working that out. So, be that as it may, things still move on, although obviously moving on a little bit late. So I'm recording this on a Monday, which is about as late as I've ever done it. Frankly, I've just wanted to sort of spend the time on the weekend with the family, out on the water, enjoying the good weather. So I did that. Sorry, that just means I put the work stuff aside for a while. Actually, no, I'm not sorry. Screw it. I've got to have more time out doing this sort of stuff. Now that said, there has been a bunch of stuff happening in terms of the cyber things, both with myself and just some really interesting things, or the things that I think are interesting in the industry at the moment as well. Now, one of them was, I had a very annoying, I don't think problem is the right word with Have I Been Pwned, a very annoying limitation, an unexpected limitation that I hit, and I shared in a tweet the other day. And I wanted to clarify a little bit about what that is here and what I'm doing about it. If you're using the Have I Been Pwned API, and it turns out that a lot of people actually had. This is the one that was free, and then I put a nominal fee on it in order to cover the cost of using Azure API management. So this is the one that's now $3.50 US cents a month. And you use a credit card, you get a key, and then you can either buy a key that lasts for 1 month, or you can buy a key that just renews automatically every month. That's all Stripe integration and things like that. Very interesting. So, put all this in place, and the excuse me. The original idea of this was I want to have auth so that I can rate limit on auth key and move away from having no auth where I only rate limit on IP address, and then bad dudes go out and they just get themselves a ton of IP addresses and just enumerate the hell out of the API. Good in theory. In practice, it has actually been working really well. I've had a heap of people signing up, paying their $3.50, and again, part of the reason for that is not just covering costs, but you tend to have a lot more legitimate use of the service when someone actually has to provide a credit card and identify themselves as opposed to being an anonymous person on the internet. I keep hearing all these noises here. There's bush turkeys in the garden. It's either bush turkeys or kangaroos. There are a lot of kangaroos just here, which is also nice. Anyway, back to the API. So this was the idea. Now, the way it works mechanically under that is you go to the website, you plug your email, this is the Have I Been Pwned website, you plug your email address in, there's a verification that you control the email address, so you receive a link with a token in it. You get that, you follow the link, and then it's like, okay, cool, we know you control this email address, now what's your name or company name, just so I know where the person is from, because this is going to be useful later on if I need to reach out to people and go, hey, there's changes or whatever else. And then you put in your card, you buy your key, and then what happens is after Stripe does all the verification, the Have I Been Pwned service hits Azure API management, it provisions a key, an API key, and then it returns it and it says, here's your key. And then you can come back later on, re-verify your email address, and then rotate the key, pull one back if you need to. So if you've lost the key or anything like that, slightly tangential to this story. Now all of this worked beautifully for more than a month. In fact, it got me through the first monthly renewals with Stripe. So Stripe did its thing and it automatically billed people who wanted to actually do it, renewals. Great, worked beautifully. And then everything stopped working about 5 days ago. Well, actually not everything. Stripe still worked, Stripe still billed people. But some people then got an error and they got no API key. And one of the first things I did is I went into Azure API management in the Azure portal, and I went to provision a new key via the GUI, and I got a message which said, you've hit the 500 account maximum limit for the consumption tier of Azure API management. This, if I'm honest, did come as a surprise. So I did not foresee the fact there was a 500 key limit. And I had just hit 500 keys being provisioned to subscribers wanting to use the API. Now, it leaves me in somewhat of a sticky position. What I end up doing, there's sort of an immediate term solution which gets people who bought keys up and running and then keeps a steady increase of new subscribers coming on, and then there's a longer term solution I'm working on with Microsoft. The challenge here is that the 500 limit is, at this point in time, a hard set. And this is one of the things I'm discussing with Microsoft is, can we sort of find ways to either be more liberal or achieve the same sort of thing under those same constraints? And that's something that we'll just have to work out in parallel to this. But one of the things that I had not yet put in place, which was always intentional, was to actually disable keys which were no longer in use. So for example, let's say you just bought a 1 month of keys and you bought it on the 15th of July. We get to the 15th of August, you've only bought a 1 month key. The key is now going to be disabled. So rather than disabling it, what I'm doing now is I'm just deleting the key. There's really no point in keeping the key. So I went through, deleted a bunch of keys that were no longer being used. That then took the 500 down to like 465 or something like that. I got buffer, great. So that allowed me to go through, and for the people that bought keys, I could then just go and provision the keys for them. They're up and running. Look, honestly, I felt terrible about it because people had paid money. Like, yes, only $3.50, but people had still paid money and they expected a product back in return, and the service didn't give it to them. And as the person running the service, that makes me feel a little bit shit. So I'm sorry for the people that had that sort of, it was only about a 3-day gap or something, but they paid for the key and didn't have it. They're back up and running. Now, the other thing that I've done is when I first had this problem, I just put in a little switch so that I could disable purchasing a new key. So I put that in place. People were going to the Have I Been Pwned website, going to the API thing, and it would come back and say, look, thank you for verifying your email address. At the moment, you can't purchase a new key. I've just got that as a configuration toggle now, so I can toggle that on and off whenever I need to. And what I'm doing is I'm just looking at how the old keys drop off, and when there's a little bit of a buffer, I'm allowing people to get new keys, and then I'll just keep that process running for the short term whilst I figure out how to get around this problem in the longer term. Now, just to be clear as well, if you're not on the consumption tier, if you're on one of these Azure API management services on one of the higher tiers, you can actually have, I'm not even sure what the maximum limit is, a lot more than 500. So this is not a hard cap limit with Azure API management. It is just to do with consumption tier. Having said that, my view is that the joy of consumption-based tiers is that you pay for what you use. And I think that it would be in everyone's best interest that you could use as much as you want to, because then you could pay Microsoft as much as you want to. Microsoft is a really good opportunity here. All right, like just let people have as much as they want. I'm sure there are engineering issues and things like that to deal with too. But this should be the joy of cloud computing and the promise of serverless and all this sort of thing. It's like, just connect the service to my wallet and let people use as much as they want, and then just charge them for it. So anyway, that has not been much fun. It's been a reminder again that with this service at the moment, not for perpetuity, but at the moment, is something that I just need to continue running myself, and every time something goes wrong, I'm the one that's got to deal with it. So it hasn't been a fun week in that regard. Moving on to other things. Data breaches. I loaded the 8Tracks data breach. I think it was many months ago now. I can't remember when exactly. Anyway, this was a data breach with 18 million records. Someone had sent me 8 million records. So I only had a partial. During this week, someone did actually send me the entire 18 million set. So I put 10 million more 8Track records into Have I Been Pwned last night. That sent out tens of thousands of notification emails to people that hadn't already been notified about the original 8 million that I'd loaded into Have I Been Pwned. So that was just sort of an interesting example of, looking how bright it is behind me now as that sun really starts to fire up in the sky. That was an interesting example of how data breaches can flow and socialize. You know, obviously the party that contacted me originally had a partial set. I'm not even sure what was the rationale for only having a partial set. And then over time it just flowed more freely. And look, even as, I'm going to do my list of things here a little bit out of date, even as I look at breaches of just the last couple of days, I see things like Hostinger So Hostinger has had a data breach, and I want to talk about this actually because it's kind of interesting for a couple of reasons. So Hostinger's had this data breach, and I have not seen data for that yet. Maybe I'll see it when I start recording this. Maybe I'll see it next month. Maybe I'll see it next year. I don't know. This is just the interesting thing about the way data flows. Now, Hostinger, I have this feeling that someone has sent me Hostinger data before, and now I'm wondering, is this one of these cases where there's an incident and there's data floating around, but the organization just doesn't know about it? And did I have this and I just wasn't able to process it and do disclosure and everything in time? And now I just have this feeling in my mind that before I left Australia on that big trip, like several months ago, I had this data. So anyway, I've got to go look in the archives, see if I can find Hostinger. That's not what I thought was interesting. What I thought was interesting, and I'd made a tweet about this, is they've done their disclosure notice. It's not terrible, but it's not great either. So one of the things that they say in here is, we use a cryptographic hash function to encrypt, not encrypt, hash, but they say encrypt, all our client passwords. Client with a capital C. Odd. That's not really the biggest problem at the moment though. It is a one-way mathematical function that converts your password to a seemingly random sequence of characters. Yeah, I mean, it's a consumer-facing message. All right, now, they say that, and they're obviously saying that to give people some confidence that there is protection of their password. Now, they don't tell you which algorithm they're using. So it could be terrible, it could be quite good. Even if it's bcrypt with a high work factor though, you can still go through and crack particularly weak passwords. And certainly one of the things that's very popular with password hash cracking is you would go through and you'd have a look at variations of the Hostinger name. You'd go through and you'd have a look at the top passwords which people tend to use. And of course, we've got a bunch of those in Have I Been Pwned. That's part of the whole pwned password thing. So the point is, even if it's bcrypt, you can still crack stuff. Now, on the one hand, they've sort of gone, yes, but we use this one-way encrypted, hashed algorithm to make it seemingly random sequence of characters. On the other hand, they're saying you should reset your password. Now, I tweeted this and sort of made a point of the dichotomy here, where on the one hand they're going, hey, we're protecting your password. On the other hand, they're going, hey, reset your password. And I sort of pointed out that was a little bit contradictory. And a bunch of people said, well, isn't this best practice anyway to reset the password? And yes, it would be. I don't disagree with resetting the password. What I disagree with is trying to indicate that the password is protected, but then on the same hand going, or on the other hand going, but maybe it's not and you need to change it. So I just think, again, this is just like a bit of a messaging issue on their behalf. I'll link through to that disclosure notice that they put out, because it's always kind of interesting looking at these notices. One of the things actually that I really want to try and do with Have I Been Pwned as I move forward into this acquisition mode, which incidentally is still well and truly ongoing, is I really want to get to the point of having something within the industry where we give organizations like Hostinger much better guidance about how to form messages and how to communicate clearly, responsibly, accurately with their customers. There should be a better way of doing this. And I think a lot of organizations are caught very flat-footed because they literally haven't ever prepared for data breach. So apparently August 23, we've received informational alerts. I have a feeling that English is not the first language of whoever's writing a lot of this. I'm not even sure where Hostinger based. Informational alerts that one of our servers has been accessed by an unauthorized party. The service contained an authorization token which was used to obtain further access and escalate privileges to our system RESTful API server. RESTful API server? Okay. The API server is used to query the details about our clients and their accounts. 14 million users, so that's rather a lot. What else they go on? Steps taken so far. Clients to secure their accounts. Strongly avoid clicking on. See, this is also kind of the irony. So a lot of people contacted me because they got emails from Hostinger saying, hey, I just got an email saying, please reset your password. One of the things they say here in their disclosure notice is, we remind our clients not to use the same password on multiple servers. Actually, no, that wasn't the bit. Here we go. Yeah. I'm jumping around a little bit. The bit about not reusing your password, good advice. True. They also say here, so remember, people are receiving emails saying, please go and reset your password. We also strongly suggest to avoid clicking on the links or downloading attachments from suspicious emails. And then you're sort of going, okay, well, how do people actually make the judgment call on what's a suspicious email or not? Because literally Hostinger is sending emails with a call to action saying, go here and enter a password for your Hostinger account. So that is somewhat ironic. But anyway, all right, that's Hostinger. Now, total change of pace. Let's go back to something a little bit more familiar, not yet touched on today. Certificate authorities, the commercial ones, and their shenanigans around everything from EV certificates through to certificate lifetime. So the two big topics that Scott and I have been hammering them on lately have been the fact that EV certificates are getting killed off from the browser in terms of, like, don't jump on me yet, in terms of the fact that they are not shown by default in the UI as they have been for many, many years. You've got to drill down on the certificate now to see if it's EV. That's going to hit, when I say now, that's going to hit Chrome next month in September. It's going to hit Firefox in October. All this browser vendors are going, well, this stuff is actually pretty useless. No one actually knows what it is. They don't pay any attention to it. They don't change their behavior in the absence of an EV certificate. So let's just get it out of the way. Commercial CA is not so happy because they can sell EV certificates. Much harder to sell DV certificates these days because of the fact you can go and get them from the likes of either Let's Encrypt or Bypass in Norway for free using an Acme client, so you can automate the provisioning and the renewal and all these wonderful things that you definitely should be doing if you have certificates. So commercial CA is not so happy about that. And still just watching people argue about the fact that they think EV has some sort of value. Like, it doesn't, that's why it's dead. Move on. Anyway, this next one here was about certificate lifespans. So round numbers, at the moment, you can have a certificate that lasts for up to a couple of years. There is a proposal to reduce that to 1 year for good reasons, including the fact that the certificate revocation process is broken. The one thing that definitely kills a certificate is that it is expired. So if you go and buy yourself a 2-year certificate, you have up to a potential 2-year window in which a certificate can be abused. If you have a 1-year certificate, you have up to 1 year it can be abused. Go to Let's Encrypt, get one for 3 months, up to 3 months through which it can be abused. Now, let's play devil's advocate. So two different sides of the argument here to certificate lifespan. If a certificate has to be renewed every year, you have to do twice as much work as if it has to be renewed every 2 years. On the other hand, so this is sort of the argument we're going to get to in a moment. On the other hand, if you automate the process of certificate renewal, whether it's every 2 years, 1 year, or 3 months, doesn't matter. Now, some people get upset about this and they say either, oh, it can't be renewed because special reasons. And I'm sure there are some edge cases, but think about what we're doing here. So we're taking a human activity and we're automating. By the way, it's an activity that is important and it's repetitive and it is automatable, which is precisely the sort of thing we should be automating. And I just can't get people who are like, oh yes, I have to do it manually to make sure it's okay. Have you seen how many certificates are subject to manual renewal and then people forget to renew them or some part of that process breaks down? That's crazy. And then I go, oh, automation doesn't fix everything. What if the automation fails? Well, yeah, it's like you have monitoring. Like automation doesn't mean that you don't have monitoring. It just means that everything can go with a lot less human interaction, and you can still have fail-safes and controls in place for if it doesn't work, and buffers of time to make sure that you can fix whatever process it was that broke. So the anti-automation argument is just a complete crock of shit. Now, Scott published a tweet here 1 day ago, and it was funny because we were talking about this yesterday. He says, I miss that the responses to the DigiCert survey were published. This makes for sad reading. Now, DigiCert has published here to the CAB forum, so the CA browser forum, and this is a survey that they've done around reducing certificate lifetimes. Now, first of all, let's take a step back. DigiCert is a commercial certificate authority. They sell certificates. They sell EV certificates, AV certificates, EV certificates. They sell these certificates which last for up to 2 years. If you get an EV certificate, as of today, you can still have a 2-year certificate. And they are vehemently against the proposition of certificates expiring in half that time. Now, Scott and I spoke about this together when we were in Vegas recently. Let's just say this month, because I'm honestly just losing track. Earlier this month. And the arguments are bizarre. The arguments just don't make a lot of sense. And the arguments basically center around the fact that it will make more work for organizations. And yes, that's true if they're doing it wrong to begin with. So if they're doing the whole thing manually, remember we just had the discussion about if it's important and it's repetitive, then you automate it because it should be automated. So the arguments are very much around organisations who are doing it wrong. They're doing it the old way, they're doing it manually. And there's this discussion here about do we drag them kicking and screaming into the future where you can actually automate this stuff. Now, also, automation doesn't always mean that it has to be Let's Encrypt, doesn't always mean that it has to be the ACME protocol. It's just simply a recognition that this is something that is important and repetitive, and we should take the humans out of the picture as far as we possibly can. Certificate authorities who are selling certificates are worried about this, and frankly I think one of the big reasons they're worried about it is that if an organisation today is manually buying 2-year certificates and they say we're going to have to do this much more frequently, hey, let's do something sensible and actually automate the thing, when they start having the automation discussion, they're going to look at other models of certificate authority provisioning certificates. They're going to look at the likes of Let's Encrypt and ACME, and of course that's a risk to commercial certificate authorities. So this ballot here, the responses that DigiCert have by querying organisations, it just makes for absolute painful reading, because as you read through this, you read how inefficiently organisations are running. Now, before someone from DigiCert possibly watches this and jumps on their keyboard and smashes away at how you don't understand how it works in large organisations, I spent 14 years in Pfizer, like one of the largest organisations in the world. Traditional organisations, they were 160 years old at the time. They have a lot of this stuff working manually, or they certainly did back then. I've joyfully been gone 4.5 years now. So I've seen how much manual, laborious, inefficient processes there are in an organisation. I'm just like literally going to scroll through and randomly pick stuff here. Things like, it is already such a pain to deal with SSL certs. This would in effect double the pain. Please do not do this. It's painful because you're doing it wrong. And yes, organisational constraints and all that sort of stuff, but for God's sake, just start doing it right. Someone here, because I don't need more busy work. Someone else, cost. You know how to address the cost issue with certificates? Stop freaking paying for them. Our services do not change often enough to warrant renewal effort every 13 months. It's got nothing to do with your services changing. The problem is that when you read through this, you really quickly understand how little people understand about the certificate ecosystem. I don't understand the trade-off enough. What does short of validity period improve security? Someone else here. This negatively impacts small businesses because you're doing it wrong. Keeping up is already tough. Adding a shorter life periods and additional cost is a terrible idea. Only good for the biggies, Apple, Google, Facebook. If only there was a way for the non-biggies to get certificates for free and automate the renewal process. Another example, pushing the little people around. Stop doing evil. Who are these people? Now, incidentally, when Scott originally tweeted this, he said something like, obviously this is like a hand-picked selection of customers. And now, don't quote me on this, go and read Scott's timeline, but my understanding is DigiCert originally were going to hand-pick a selection of customers to provide feedback. You can guess that might be a bit biased. I believe, based on reading the thread, that they then made it more open and it's not like a hand-picked selection. But you're probably still ending up with a selection of individuals within organisations who are really behind the 8 ball with the way these things should be working. There's no clear benefit to the proposed change. It's a theoretical at best, but again, like you just don't understand why this is valuable. This would be a financial impact upon our company. Now, in fairness, I think there would be a financial impact only insofar as where there are manual processes and the process needs to be revised in order to be automated. Yes, that requires effort. But the thing is that manual effort, which you've been reproducing over and over and over and over again, once you can automate that, it goes away forever and you get to save money in the longer term, but it requires upfront investment. Now, again, I've spent enough time in like massive organizations to understand that can be a hard sell, because some managers got to dip their hand into their budget for this year and take money out of that, and it's going to save money in later years, which are going to be other people's budget. And your performance bonuses and things are not going to be impacted by the savings later on, they're going to be impacted by the cost now. And it just again exposes the entire layers of shit that are in many large organizations. I'm not convinced it will improve security, too much extra work required, increased cost for no perceived benefit, just increases the overhead, I'm already busy enough, I see no reason to shorten the validity period. One of the big themes in here is people saying they can't see the reasons or they don't understand the reasons. And I think if nothing else, this is showing that the communication around the shorter period is maybe not getting through to these people. Now, I don't think the communication is wrong. I just think it's not resonating in the way it needs to with people to get endorsed in this. If a certificate is compromised, it can always be revoked. Well, yeah, it can be, but the type process is broken. This is sort of the reason why we're having this discussion. Anyway, look, I'm going to link through to this. It is really, really extensive. So if nothing else, let's try and find a positive upside to this. I think it's good that we have this feedback. It's good that DigiCert has done this and published it publicly. The certificate lifespan should still definitely decrease. We just need to understand what the challenges people have that they're dealing with. And frankly, we need to find the best possible ways to make it easy for them. I do think there's got to be a little bit of tough love as well. We have major problems in the ecosystem around the fact that the revocation process is broken. There are massive upsides to reducing that period. We just need to take people through the process, and then as we come through the other side, everyone will be a lot happier. Except for maybe the commercial CAs, but like everyone else will be a lot happier. All right, so that is pretty much that. I don't have anything more on this week. There's just been a heap of tweaks and things like that, but to be honest, frankly, I've just been trying to have a little bit of downtime as well. So look, we'll see what I come up with next week. Next week, I'll still be here in Oz, so I'll do another one from here. Next week, it'll actually be the end of this week if I manage to do it on time. And I'll see if I can get something picturesque. I know that in the last update when I was in Norway, I was like, yes, I'll be on a boat on the water and it will be fantastic. I was yesterday, but I decided not to work and instead spend the time with my kids. Last thing, sponsor this week, StrongDM. So StrongDM saying, see why Splunk CISO says StrongDM enables you to see what happens, replay and analyze incidents. You can't get that anywhere else. StrongDM has been on there, I think, for about 4 weeks now. So big thanks to those guys for their ongoing sponsorship as well. They help me do what I do, so please go and check out StrongDM. I will come to you next week, which is actually going to be the end of this week, and I'll do another one of these. And look, as always, if there's anything you actually want me to cover that you think is a burning issue or worthy of discussion, please drop me a comment and let me know. And that is it. See you later in the week.